Scott Bales, you are the chairman of the vetting commission, and you came in Moldova from the United States of America to evaluate in the first stage the judges from the Supreme Court of Justice in Moldova. It's a little bit a long way, we can say, even literally. And I want to ask did you manage to meet someone in Moldova from the judicial class, from the political class?
Well, I have. This is actually my fourth trip to Moldova. I came first in July after we were appointed. And during that trip, we met with the president, we met with representatives from parliament, we met with representatives from the courts.
So what are your impressions about Moldova?
I'm very impressed with the people in Moldova. I greatly admire what you're trying to do here as part of your efforts at justice reform and as part of your broader efforts to become ultimately members of the EU.
So let's continue our dialogue in the studio. Scott Bales, jurist din Statele Unite ale Americii, anterior și președinte al Curții Supreme de Justiție din statul american Arizona, iar în vara acestui an ați fost ales, de fapt, președinte al comisiei vetting. O comisie care va verifica integritatea etică, averile și profesionalismul actualilor membri ai Curții Supreme de Justiție, dar și ai candidaților la funcțiile de membri ai Curții Supreme de Justiție. Acest vetting sau această evaluare a membrilor CSJ este de fapt a doua parte a unei reforme ample a justiției anunțată în Republica Moldova de către actualul partid de guvernare. Și dumneavoastră, domnule Bales, sunteți unul dintre membrii internaționali ai acestei comisii și aș vrea să vă întreb cum și cine v-a propus să faceți parte din Comisia de Vetting în Republica Moldova.
So that's a very good question. The vetting commission here in Moldova that I'm involved with has 6 members. There are 3 Moldovans, and there are 3 people that were suggested to Parliament by Moldova's development partners, the EU, the World Bank, the United States, others. And of the 3 members that were suggested by the development partners, I'm one of those. The other 2 are Lavly Perling, who's a former prosecutor general from Estonia, and Giuliana Civanini, who's a retired judge from Italy. The way I became involved is I heard that Moldova was undertaking this project. I was asked if, since I was retired as a judge in Arizona, if I might be interested in helping. And I then spoke to representatives from the United States, from the broader group of development partners, and ultimately was one of the names suggested. And then I spoke to the Parliament's Committee on Appointments and Law, and was, like all of the other members, ultimately approved by a majority of the Parliament, a supermajority of the Parliament.
Ce știați dumneavoastră despre sistemul de justiție din Republica Moldova înainte de a veni aici?
I knew that the courts broadly in Moldova were part of reform efforts for the justice system, that there had been some changes over the past years in the composition of different courts, in the composition of the Supreme Council of Magistracy, the body that governs court operations in different ways. And I knew that Moldova had earlier this year approved the law that the commission I'm on is now implementing, which would provide for vetting not only of the judges now sitting on the Supreme Court of Justice, but also candidates for that office. And I understood that these efforts to ensure the integrity of the judges were part of a broader package of justice reforms that Moldova is undertaking, in part in its path to membership in the European Union.
Ați avut vreo revelație între timp, din momentul în care ați venit și nu știați prea multe despre sistemul de justiție din Republica Moldova și ce ați reușit să vedeți în perioada în care v-ați început cumva munca în cadrul comisiei?
Well, the Moldovan system to me is different from what I'm familiar with in the U.S., in part because the appointment process is so different. In the United States, almost all judges are appointed by executive officials, by people either who would be in the governor's office or, for federal judges, the president of the United States. You have a different system in Moldova, which is common to other European countries, where the courts themselves have a greater role in the selection and ultimately the appointment of judges. So that system's different to me. And I didn't appreciate how different that is in its practical consequences until I came here and could see it firsthand.
Dumneavoastră, domnule Bales, sunteți președintele comisiei de vetting, așa cum spuneam mai devreme, și evaluările candidaților la Curtea Supremă de Justiție au început încă în luna august, dacă nu mă înșel, dar nu am văzut deocamdată interviurile propriu-zise sau interviuri propriu-zise cu unii dintre candidații la funcția de membri ai Curții Supreme de Justiție. Există motive pentru care este întârziată deocamdată, iată, trecerea la următoarea etapă de evaluare și anume cea a interviurilor?
Well, the process has several steps, and it's meant to both be very thorough to determine whether the people that are under review do meet the criteria for ethical and financial integrity, but it's also meant to be fair. The people that are under review should have an opportunity to explain, to answer questions. So the way it works is, at the beginning, the commission sends questionnaire and forms to the subjects that they then complete. The commission also independently gets information from different public and private entities, like the state tax authority, and evaluates that information, and where there are questions, asks the candidates and the judges for more information or to clarify things. So that takes multiple steps, and once that information gathering is largely complete, the commission tells the person under review if there are areas that still raise questions, and then there's an opportunity for a public hearing where the person can come in and talk. And that happens before the commission reaches its final conclusions. So we've been in that investigative process for these last now more than 2 months. And we're on the eve of actually having some public hearings, we think, in the next week or so on the first subjects.
22 din cei 25 de judecători ai Curții Supreme de Justiție și-au dat demisia cu mult înainte să înceapă acest proces de evaluare a lor. Aceștia spuneau atunci, sau cei mai mulți dintre ei, că au urmărit cum s-a desfășurat procedura de pre-vetting și că nu au avut suficientă încredere în ea sau nu au încredere cum se face această evaluare. Credeți că aceste declarații ale foștilor magistrați ai Curții Supreme de Justiție aveau motive justificate sau era doar un mod de a boicota ulterioara lor evaluare?
Well, I can't speak to why the judges decided what they decided. I think after the law was passed that sets up the commission for the vetting commission, I think it was at that point that maybe 20 of the 25 judges resigned. Once our process began, there were 5 sitting judges on the Supreme Court of Justice. 2 of those judges resigned after the evaluation process started, and the law allows them to do that. It gives them a period in which they can resign. So I don't know, again, why people chose to do what they do. I think the process, though, the process for both pre-vetting and certainly the process for now for our commission, I think it reflects a commitment to being thorough and fair, and the people that are involved in those processes, they know what the criteria are, and they have an opportunity to provide information so that the commissions can make their assessments. So I would not criticize the process from what I've seen.
Ce impedimente credeți că ar putea să întâmpine comisia de vetting din care dumneavoastră faceți parte și pe care o conduceți în acest proces de evaluare a eticii și integrității magistraților, dar și a averilor acestora?
I think our challenge is getting the information, because you're talking about periods of time that vary somewhat. There are in the law particular time periods that we look at for things like violations of the rules of conduct or conflicts of interest, or for the financial criteria, differences between identified sources of income and what people have actually spent or the wealth they've acquired. So a challenge is just gathering the information over a number of years. It could range from 5 to 12 years, depending on the criteria. But I think while it's a challenge, it's not a roadblock. It's something that can be met. It just takes more effort and attention and resources.
V-a abordat cineva din clasa politică sau juridică din Republica Moldova ca să discutați despre felul în care veți face această evaluare a magistraților CSJ?
Our commission and its evaluation is independent. We don't look to other parts of government for any guidance in terms of what we do or how we decide the evaluation of particular candidates. What we have heard from not just different parts of government, but also from the public, is a desire to see the process move efficiently and effectively. So we've been urged to perform our task in a way that boosts confidence of the public and helps ensure that the judges and the candidates for judicial positions are people that meet the criteria for ethical and financial integrity.
Înainte de comisia vetting, ceva mai devreme, și-a început activitatea comisia pre-vetting. Ce lecții credeți că ar trebui sau ați putea să preluați din activitatea comisiei anterioare de evaluare pentru ceea ce urmează și pentru ceea ce faceți deja dumneavoastră la comisia de vetting de evaluare a magistraților CSJ într-o primă instanță, iar apoi înțelegem că vor urma și judecătorii din instanțele de apel?
Right. Your question recognizes what pre-vetting was focused on were people who were candidates to be on the Superior Council of Magistracy. Right now, my commission is focused on the judges and candidates for the office of judge for the Supreme Court. Once we complete that process, we're going to look at the judges on the Court of Appeals and the chief judges and vice chief judges for the district courts. So our subject matter is a little different. We learned from the pre-vetting commission because even though it was applying a different law with different subjects, it considered things like the content of its rules, its processes, how to even set up hearings, and we could learn from that. So I think we've been able to get started more quickly with our work. So that's been a benefit to us, a lesson learned. They were starting more from the very beginning. They didn't have, a precedent in Moldova that they could learn from.
Okay. Un caz de rezonanță legat de activitatea Comisiei Pre-Vetting a fost cel al avocatului Iulian Muntean. Acesta a devenit membru al Consiliului Superior al Magistraturii, dar ulterior s-a aflat că el era bănuit într-un dosar de luare de mită, și-a dat ulterior demisia și Comisia Pre-Vetting a spus că nu a fost informată despre faptul că ar exista un dosar penal pe numele acestuia. Întrebarea mea în acest context ar fi ce va face Comisia vetting și cum se va asigura că nu vor exista omisiuni, de exemplu, sau informații incomplete din partea organelor de drept despre candidații sau pretendenții la funcția de magistrat al Curții Supreme de Justiție? Cum veți evita astfel de situații dacă, bineînțeles, ați luat în calcul o astfel de posibilitate?
Well, I think it's important that we seek the information from the different agencies and that we try as best we can to make sure that we have the most current information before we make any final decisions. We try to get as complete picture as we can through the questions we ask the candidates and the information we seek from public agencies and others, and we want to make sure that we have updated information, again, as best we can before we make any final recommendations or decisions. And one thing I guess I should add, because this might not yet be clear, the pre-vetting commission itself was the decision-making body. It decided on whether someone would qualify as a candidate or not. Our vetting commission is different because we complete a report that goes to the Superior Council of Magistracy, and the SCM is the body that makes a decision based on our report, but it does so after it reviews the report and other information and another opportunity by the subject to provide information to the SCM. So our report and our process is not the final decision.
Dacă ați fi judecător în Republica Moldova, v-ar deranja ceva în modul și felul în care se desfășoară această evaluare pentru magistrații de la Curtea Supremă de Justiție?
I think if I were a judge, I'd welcome the vetting process because it's a way to secure public confidence in the courts. It's a way to show people that you're not a judge that there should be concerns about you're being possibly influenced improperly by others, that you are independent, that you do have the ethical and financial integrity that people, I think, deserve from members of the court. So no, I think I think as a judge, you should embrace means of reassuring the public that the system does have integrity and is fair.
Domnule Bales, actuala guvernare din Republica Moldova și-a asumat o reformă profundă a sistemului de justiție, spunând în primul rând că își dorește să curețe acest sistem de persoanele viciate și corupte și să le tragă la răspundere. Aceste evaluări ale judecătorilor și procurorilor care au fost propuse de actuala guvernare ar trebui să reformeze profund sistemul de justiție din Republica Moldova. Totuși, lucrurile merg mai anevoios, poate, decât s-ar fi așteptat cetățenii, dar chiar și clasa politică, probabil, la începutul anunțului acestei reforme majore. Urmărind și analizând felul în care se reformează justiția în Republica Moldova, ce ați remarca, în primul rând, atât din punct de vedere laudativ, să zicem, dar și critic?
First, praise the commitment by Moldova to make the effort. It is a big undertaking, as it is very hard. It's disruptive in the sense that some judges will leave office, perhaps ultimately be removed from office. It is difficult in that, as I said, the assessments themselves take time. They take resources in terms of people and money. So the commitment to do it is, I think, admirable because fair courts that are unbiased, not subject to improper influence, are so important to defending people's rights, resolving disputes, and ultimately to a country's economic success. You need that as part of effective justice reform, but it's not easy to do. And it's not something you can do overnight. So those are things I admire. I think some people have been frustrated that the process cannot move more quickly. And I think I think that might reflect an impatience that doesn't appreciate how difficult the process is.
Sistemul de justiție american, din care veniți dumneavoastră, este unul foarte complex și este, cred că, foarte diferit de cel din Republica Moldova. Dar, în același timp, sistemul de justiție american este recunoscut ca fiind unul profesionist în care etica și integritatea oamenilor care fac justiție chiar contează cu adevărat. Ce lecții credeți că ar putea prelua Republica Moldova, justiția de aici, din sistemul de justiție din Statele Unite ale Americii, ținând cont, bineînțeles, de diferențele evidente dintre acestea două?
Well, I think any court system, whether the United States, whether Moldova, it's important that you have in place guidelines for the proper conduct of judges, whether in terms of ethics or in terms of financial activity, that you have in place those guidelines, that they be monitored and that they be enforced. And ideally, the court system itself has processes to do that, to discipline judges. But even in countries like the United States, you need external oversight. You need people other than the judges to make sure that they're themselves following the rules. And I think the reform efforts here are aimed at trying to ensure that those kinds of processes are in place, that you have rules to ensure, again, that judges are not influenced improperly, that they don't have conflicts of interest, that they're not corrupt. And it's vital that you not only have the rules, but that the rules are followed and that there's oversight to ensure that's happening.
La baza reformării justiției din Republica Moldova stă această evaluare a judecătorilor și procurorilor și o strategie similară de reformare a putut fi urmărită în Albania, o altă țară de pe continentul european, și acolo procesul de evaluare a durat câțiva ani și s-a soldat cu foarte multe demisii, plecări din sistem, ceea ce a dus ulterior și la tărăgânarea unor cazuri în instanțele de judecată. Știu că una dintre colegele dumneavoastră, care face parte din comisia de vetting, a și asistat sau a oferit sfaturi pentru această reformă a justiției în Albania. Și probabil ați discutat care au fost acolo efectele pozitive și poate efectele mai puțin bune ale reformei. Și atunci aș vrea să vă întreb ce credeți că ar trebui să facă Republica Moldova pentru a evita, de exemplu, o plecare masivă a judecătorilor sau, în general, sau și a procurorilor din sistemul de justiție, pentru a nu se pomeni într-un blocaj acest sistem.
So you are right that the experience in Albania was looked at in terms of identifying the process for Moldova. Experiences in other countries like the Ukraine also was. The laws in those countries differ, reflecting the different circumstances, the different resources in the countries. I think there is, as I said, a consequence of undergoing a vetting process is there's disruption because some sitting judges will leave or be removed and they can't instantly be replaced because you have to go through the selection process to identify new judges. That's one of the costs that comes with vetting, but it's one of the things that has to be accepted if you're going to do the process. Now, to try to minimize that, ideally, you'd have the process move for the evaluation of candidates to be new judges as quickly as possible. You would not have that get bogged down. That takes resources at in different places within the justice system. As I think I mentioned, in Moldova, judicial selection is something that the Superior Council of Magistrates is involved in, the SCM. So you need to have resources and people in place at the SCM to help identify the new judges. So you want to try to avoid bottlenecks at different parts of the justice system, because one consequence of vetting is that you're going to need to appoint new judges if the experience that we've seen in other countries holds true here, or even if you can just look to what has happened so far in Moldova as the vetting process has progressed. I mean, we know some judges are going to resign. Some judges at the end of the day may be removed. And to avoid the problem that you identified, Moldova needs to have in place the system to identify and appoint new judges.
Probabil întrebarea firească după acest răspuns al dumneavoastră, care se aude de fapt destul de des printre cetățenii care urmăresc acest proces de evaluare, este de unde vor găsi politicienii, să zicem, din Republica Moldova, sau unde se vor găsi în Republica Moldova suficienți alți judecători sau procurori care să suplimenteze locurile celor care au plecat sau au demisionat.
Well, I think the answer is from among the other judges and other people who are eligible for those positions, who are committed to working in a public setting, who meet the criteria for ethical and financial integrity.
Aș vrea să discutăm cu dumneavoastră despre cât de mult se poate sau nu se poate implica clasa politică în sistemul de justiție din Republica Moldova, mai exact în reforma justiției, ca să fim corecți. Și am să pornesc de la un caz care s-a întâmplat în luna august a acestui an, când Curtea Supremă de Justiție a anulat peste noapte, practic, puțin peste 20 de decizii ale comisiei prevetting, care spuneau că mai mulți judecători și procurori nu au trecut acea evaluare. Atunci guvernarea a criticat deciziile și a spus că cei care se află la CSJ prin aceste decizii nu au arătat decât că sunt parte a unei minorități corupte din tagma judecătorilor. Ulterior, o parte din sistemul judecătoresc a acuzat influențe din partea politicienilor în justiție. Și întrebarea ar fi dacă o reformă profundă a justiției, așa cum a început-o și și-o dorește, se pare că Republica Moldova, poate fi făcută fără intervenția politicului.
I think it can. I think the work of our commission can be done independently as the law contemplates. And that's partly because the way the commission is structured. When we began talking and we talked about the members of the commission, it was very carefully structured. So there'd be 3 Moldovan citizens, 3 people that were not necessarily Moldovans, that ended up being people from 3 different countries. The thing that the 6 of us share in common is a commitment that we are going to do this process fairly and objectively. We're not going to be subject ourselves to outside influences. And I think at the end of the day, our evaluations are going to reflect that commitment. And that whether a particular subject does or does not pass our evaluation is going to reflect that individual's own merits, that individual's own conduct. It's not going to be related in any way to external politics or other considerations.
Dar, în general, când poate fi clasa politică sau politicul în general, factorul politic acuzat, de exemplu, că de imixtiune în procesul de justiție? Pentru că aici s-ar putea să fie și o dilemă. Sistemul de justiție pare viciat, dar în același timp nu vrea să se reformeze sau nu vrea să se autocurețe de persoanele care sunt corupte.
So that is, your question is a very good one. It's why vetting of the kind of vetting that Moldova is undertaking is something that is an extraordinary measure. It's meant to be something that's done one time because the courts, for various reasons, have been incapable of cleansing themselves, of securing the confidence from the public that they are operating with judges who have financial and ethical integrity. The challenge is doing vetting in a way that doesn't itself make the courts subject to improper pressure or influence. So you need to have fair and independent courts. If the courts can't ensure that the judges themselves have the desired integrity needed to have the confidence, to deserve the confidence of the public, and you're going to make that change through an external measure, you have to be very careful to build the process in a way that ensures that it's independent and fair and motivated just by the desire to have judges that do meet those criteria for integrity.
Reformele în justiție în Republica Moldova se fac, în primul rând, așa cum spun autoritățile, pentru cetățenii săi, pentru ca oamenii să poată avea încredere în procesul de justiție, dar se fac și pentru că Republica Moldova și-a asumat aceste reforme în procesul de apropiere de Uniunea Europeană. Și un recent raport al Comisiei Europene arată sau spune Republicii Moldova că dacă va reuși să facă progrese serioase sau semnificative, mai exact, în justiție, va putea să-și deschidă, să zicem, negocierile de aderare cu Uniunea Europeană, de exemplu, într-un scenariu bun, în luna martie a anului viitor. Credeți că Republica Moldova are capacitatea și poate să facă schimbări semnificative în justiție în următoarele, să zicem, 4 luni până se face martie?
I think Moldova has the opportunity. I think it has the determination. It's going to require a lot of work and perseverance over the next several months. But I think it can do that. I think it can make further progress in justice reform, and I think the work of the vetting commission will contribute to that.
So you are optimistic about that?
I'm optimistic, but I recognize, as I said, it's going to take a lot of work to continue moving forward. But I'm also encouraged by the support that we've seen from not just members of the justice system in Moldova, but people more broadly. When you hear people talk, it's very common for people to say they really want to see a justice system that doesn't raise concerns of corruption, that is more fair, that is more effective in helping people resolve their disputes and defend their rights.
Crezi că reforma justiției în Republica Moldova poate fi considerată încheiată în momentul în care au fost îndepliniți toți pașii tehnici pe care și-au propus autoritățile, sau totuși va fi un proces care va dura și după?
I don't know that I can answer your question from the perspective of Moldova. I think that would require a broader view than the work I'm doing on the commission. As a former judge in the state of Arizona in the United States, I think efforts to improve the judiciary, to ensure that it works well, that it works with integrity, you have to accept that's an ongoing process. But that means that we continue to advance towards our goals. It means you can't stop and say that you've finally arrived.
Domnule Scott Bales, dialogul nostru a ajuns la final și vă mulțumesc pentru această discuție.
Mulțumesc!
Acesta este podcastul Video pe Agenda, cu o ediție nouă în fiecare miercuri, de obicei după amiaza. Îl puteți găsi pe paginile Europei Libere, precum și pe canalul nostru de pe YouTube. Pentru că aici încercăm să găsim răspunsuri la întrebările care contează pentru dumneavoastră.